The segregation of children in public schools solely on the basis of race deprive the children of the minority group of equal educational opportunities? We believe that it does. We conclude that, in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal.
My grandparents lived right down the street on 17th Street, about a block and a half from Monroe Elementary. So on the first day of the second semester in January, we started school here at Monroe Elementary. It's quite different from the school I attended in Lake Elsinore because all the teachers here were Black. Most of them were women. The principal was a woman. Strong Black women who had a very high standard of expectation for the students, both academically and behaviorally.
They had the same curricula, the same textbooks, the schedules are the same. So in terms of separate but equal, Topeka schools are really good for all students.
I do recall being impressed with those educators, and I think many of them, what they shared of themselves with the children inspired me to become an educator later in life.
Teaching, particularly for an African-American female, is one of the few professions. It's very well respected. And again, you have to understand, education is one of the hallmarks of the African-American fight for equality. The understanding that education is necessary for these children to prosper and improve themselves.
Mr. McKinley Burnett went to the same church we went to, lived right across the alley. We were at his house at least once a week. My mother and his daughters were best friends. So to me, he was Brother Burnett. You know, he wasn't this key figure in mobilizing the NAACP.
Topeka is where someone had the backbone and the wherewithal to say, no, enough is enough, this isn't right.
You started getting a bunch of young fire eaters in the NAACP. I'm talking guys like Bob Carter, who was a judge who recently passed away, Jack Greenberg, who took over for Thurgood Marshall after he went to the Supreme Court. These guys were pushing at Marshall to go after the public schools. Marshall wasn't quite sure the time was right, but they pushed and they pushed and they pushed.
I asked my mother about parts of that, and she did tell me during the time that the case was being formed and the community was being rallied, she was secretary for him in the NAACP.
One of the things people don't talk about is the African-American community in Topeka, as well as the Black teachers, fought against the case. The case was not supposed to go to Topeka, it was supposed to go to Wichita. Wichita teachers, Black teachers of Wichita derailed the whole case. They were afraid of their jobs to be lost. People don't really think about this. Integration of students and integration of teachers is two totally separate topics. You integrate schools, what do you think happens to Black teachers? They get fired. Again, they even thought it was insulting to the African-American community. How dare you say a Black child taught in a well-equipped Black school by a qualified Black teacher is going to learn, grow, and prosper. So that's one of the other things, is that even though today you would say, oh, I would have supported that case. Think about it if you're an African-American mother. Your kid's getting a good education. You trust the teacher. That teacher is employed. That case could make all that change. Who knows how that white teacher is going to teach your kid? You know, the romantic story of a little girl going to some place and the principal saying, "You shall not," is nonsense. The lawyers watched it. They knew what was going to happen. They all had done the same thing. The kids went knowing they would be turned away. You know, that's the beginning of the 1950 school year. They were recruited as plaintiffs. Obviously, it's what we call a class action suit. Oliver Brown's name appears at the top. There's a whole lot of talk about why. It may just have been somebody typed it up that way. We don't know. Not all of the plaintiffs testified. You need the plaintiffs, but in all honesty, they're not going to win you the case. It's your expert testimony who testified. And in the case of Topeka, what's so brilliant about it is the schools are great. So if you could prove these children are being hurt in Topeka, you prove it everywhere. And that's the case that took place in the The old federal building runs right down here on Kansas Avenue. Our judge was Walter Huxman, who of course governor of Kansas as well. In my opinion, a very fair, a very just man. What happened with Topeka, though, was you were supposed to raise, I can't remember, it was either $1,000 or $2,000. They only raised about $75. So basically, the lawyers didn't get paid, number one. But number two, they couldn't afford those expert witnesses, like the Kenneth Clarks. They got better. They lucked out. They got it. The unsung heroine of the Brown case is a sociology professor. She was with Meningers, I think, but was also teaching at the University of Kansas, named Louisa Holt. She went on early. She was totally unprepared. She wasn't expecting. Her words rang so deep in that courtroom, Judge Huxman repeated them in his opinion. He had his hands are tied. He's got the Supreme Court precedent, that was what, 50 some odd years of separate but equal. If he found for the plaintiffs, it's going to be overturned the next day. But the point is, this was understood by the NAACP. They had to go to the Supreme Court. They needed the stick. You have to lose. The NAACP had only fought Plessy cases. This time, the heck with it. They're going for the throat, and that the very act of segregation is what damages and hurts children. That's what is so, again, earth-shaking. And that's why a lot of people say this is one of the most transformative laws in American history.
Every time I come into this building, I find myself in the feeling quadrant. I'm one of probably hundreds, thousands of children who went to Monroe School, and probably hundreds of educators who went to Monroe School. This is my calling, and it wasn't anything I designed, but it was just what I was destined to be. An educator in Topeka Public Schools who is fearless and relentless and dedicated to this work, and who will not stop until I feel my part in the work is done.